Yes, ladies and gentlemen, first episode of this video sports podcast, Off the Bench. We are really excited. Off the Bench is featuring myself, Kevin Cornegay, Javon Tavares, and Sean Dustin. And just to give you a little bit of background, hey fellas, say what's up. Say what's up to everybody.
What's going on? What's going on?
Hey, what's up, sports world? What's up, America? Glad to be here with you, talking sports with all us aficionados and enthusiasts.
Wow, we have an incredible show. Yeah, let me give you a little bit of background. You know, this thing started about 20 years ago, and I went to high school. Javon and I went to high school together in Sacramento.
Shout out to Foothill High School Mustangs.
Oh yes, sir, Mustangs. Hilltop, that black and orange.
Two-time state champions in basketball.
Oh, say it again. Say it again.
Two-time state championship in basketball.
Oh, yes. We were young, and every single day I would grab my mother's Sacramento Bee. I would take that sports page before she would notice and throw it in my backpack. Run up to school, and I would always meet Javon either on the basketball courts, in the library, wherever, in the gym. And we were going to break out that sports page, look inside and see who won, what was the score, what were the stats, and then we would discuss it. Why did this team win? Banter, back and forth, argue. And before you know it, we have a crowd around us in the library. Cats talking about, when y'all going to be on Sports Center? Oh, these guys are going to be on Sports Center, man. ESPN, broadcasting, so on and so forth. And little do they know, we would take it a step further. Because after big games, we would conduct interviews amongst ourselves. One person is the sports reporter. The other person is the ball player, back and forth, the coach. And we would do this on a daily basis, practicing our skills and abilities. So we had a dream about 20 years ago. We lined up our college courses to try to accomplish that dream. Journalism, sports journalism is what we wanted to study, and we did that. And then, as you know, life kind of takes you in different directions, different roads, and so on and so forth. So we were never able to get back into this, but life has come full circle with technology, Facebook, YouTube, video cam. We knew that we could start this. So about 2 years ago, we said, hey, let's really talk about this. Let's really get this thing off the ground. And just recently, Javon found another individual who was just as good as we were when it came to sports. Had a great knowledge of all sports, all aspects of the game. Sean Dustin. And he asked Sean Dustin if he would join us in this endeavor. And so I'm so humbled. We're so blessed to get this off the ground. This is our first show, Off the Bench. We're going to try to bring you material each and every week. We record on Saturdays, and then we'll put it out sometime during the week. But we're going to stick with the hot topics that are trending, and we're really excited about it. The first thing I wanted to do, guys, is I wanted to ask you a question, and I want both of you to answer. How old were you, and where were you the first time you knew you fell in love with sports? How old were you, and where were you living? And what was the event that caused you to fall in love with sports? Who wants to take that?
For me, I was between 5 and 6 years old. My dad, I have 2 older brothers, 1 younger brother, and my dad would always play catch with us. We played pickle in the front yard, you know, and taught me the game of baseball. You know, I got involved in t-ball at 5 years old. My first team was the Yankees, which is why I'm a huge Yankee fan. And I fell in love with the camaraderie, meeting people from different backgrounds that I would have not met otherwise. People from different, you know, socioeconomic backgrounds, and the thing that all kind of bound us together was competition and you know, a love for the game. And you know, walking out in a morning seeing the dew on the grass and smelling the fresh cut grass and, the red vine, the big long licorices and the snow cones, getting a foul ball and being able to take the foul ball and get a snow cone. And, shortly thereafter, I fell in love with collecting baseball cards, basketball cards, and really geeking off of that and looking at all the stats on the back of the cards and knowing how many games someone played, what their average was, their slugging percentage, their RBIs, stolen bases, strikeouts, at-bats, base on balls, innings pitched and saves. And I just began really geeking off the stats and trying to draw conclusions between what those stats really meant to the and how they affected the game. And it just springboarded from there to my love for other sports and the dynamics of the team sports and the player interaction and the nonverbal communication and signs and the game within the game, the chess match and the strategy. And from there, it just took off. I fell in love with it immediately.
Right. Javon.
Yeah, I would say for me, I would hear these stories from my aunts and uncles and parents. I would hear these stories about how when I would get toys for Christmas or I would get toys for a birthday, coupled with a sports item like a football or a basketball, I would hear these stories, as early as 2 and 3 years old, that I disregarded the other toys in favor of the basketball, in favor of the football, anything sports related. So I think for me, this is something that was innate. It was something that's, inherent. It's built into my DNA. Of course, I have parents that were involved in sports and things like that. So I think it was built in my DNA. But the first time I actually remember falling in love with the game of football and really understanding the concept of a team and of a sport was I was 4 years old, and my grandfather, Melvin Tolles, rest in peace, was a huge sports fan. So he would always have some type of sport on. And I remember one day, and this is my earliest memory, I remember one day seeing a football team. They had these helmets on that looked kind of like bumblebees, or they were the weirdest helmets that I've ever seen, but they were cool. And there was, of course, the classic Michigan Wolverines helmet. And so I remember asking my grandfather, I said, why are their helmets so different? He said, hey, they have a very different helmet. They're steeped in a rich tradition of football, and everybody knows the Michigan Wolverines by their helmet. So
yes.
I would notice every time that team came on, I said, hey, Grandpa, that's Michigan. That's Michigan playing. He's like, yeah. And so I remember probably a year later, they had a running back. I don't know if you remember, Kev, Jamie Morris.
Jamie Morris, yes.
So he was the brother of New York Giants running back Joe Morris. So Jamie Morris was a Michigan running back, and he was diminutive in stature. He was about 5'6". And I remember watching him thinking, wow, he kind of looks like me out there. And so from that point, I started following, I started tracking with Michigan football. And, of course, with sports being on in the household all the time, I fell in love with the other sports as well. But that's the first actual memory, or the first set of memories that I can trace back to my love for sports. And so to this day, everybody still knows that I'm a diehard Michigan Wolverines fan. But, yeah, that's when I officially fell in love with sports.
I remember everything growing up as a child. I lived with my mom only, never met my father. And everything that made my mother excited or happy was something that always made me feel good. I remember in '82, I didn't know much about the sport, but we were watching Georgetown, North Carolina title game.
That's big.
And I didn't know who the players were at the time, but I remember Jordan hits the shot, and my mother jumps out from the couch, and she's jumping around the living room. And because I saw the joy on her face, that made me happy. So I'm doing the same thing. All right, I don't know what's going on. Who's playing, Mom? Who won? She was happy. I was happy. And seeing the joy that came from her was when I knew I needed to start paying attention to this sports thing. And so it started from there. Everything that was on TV during that time was sport. It was a sporting event. Mom loved it. And from the 49ers, the Super Bowls, Roger Craig was our favorite.
And there was a lot of them.
There were a lot of them. There was a lot of screaming.
It was almost a perennial event.
Yeah, there was a lot of screaming going on. But that was the fondest memory where I can remember watching a sporting event, watching the joy that came, from my mother, and saying to myself, that looks like it's a lot of fun. And so throughout the years, she put me into soccer. 5 years old, I loved the camaraderie amongst boys and men, our coaches. It was different, being at home all the time with a woman. I hadn't seen a lot of men figures, male affirmation. And so getting into that environment, T-ball, all of those things. But that was the biggest thing. That's where I knew I kind of like this. I like this sport. I like to see guys getting up and down, jumping. I like to see big hits, on the football field, so on and so forth. And then, of course, I was spoiled because all of the teams that we watched, when I was young, because I watched everything that she watched, they were winning. They were winning championships. So that looked like a lot of fun, watching them hold the trophy up, so on and so forth. So that's where I started to fall in love with sports. Thanks for sharing that. Let's I looked at a score. Right now, Cleveland was up 6. Game 1. Let me see. Now they're up 8 right now. Game 1, Cleveland, Indiana, the Pacers. That segues right into our first topic. I wanted to ask you guys, NBA playoffs, are we pretty much just headed for Cavs Warriors round 3? Or are there potential landmines that you guys might see out there that can derail the rubber match? What are you guys thinking?
I'll let you weigh in on this one first, Flo.
So to answer your question, I think in today's modern sports world, nothing is a foregone conclusion. I think the amount of upsets that we witness, not just in, the NFL, but not just in the NBA, but collegiate sports, nothing is a foregone conclusion. I think coming into the beginning of the sports year, I think we all thought, with the acquisition of Kevin Durant to the Golden State Warriors, I think we all thought that it was just a matter of time before they would reconvene in a third rubber match, so to speak, with the Cleveland Cavaliers. But with the way the Cleveland Cavaliers finished the season, okay, and with the way that the Golden State Warriors finished the season, winning 9 out of their last 10 games, getting Kevin Durant back into the fold, I think that we can say that Golden State is more of a sure bet to get to the finals. And I think ultimately Cleveland and Golden State will end up there, but I'm not as sure as I was a couple months ago. I'm not. Cleveland, I think we can admit that they have one of the greatest players that we've ever seen in NBA history, LeBron James.
Absolutely.
He shrugged off a lot of the early criticism about his inability to deliver in the toughest moments, and he's as clutch as they come. He's probably the most talented basketball player on the planet. Won't win MVP this year, but LeBron James can affect the game in so many different ways. So yeah, I feel that they will eventually get there, but I got to tell you, the Washington Wizards, from an athletic standpoint, okay, they don't have the playoff experience. They're not battle tested, but John Wall is as athletic as any point guard in the league. He has Russell Westbrook type athleticism. Bradley Beal. This is an individual that's a sniper that's coming to his own. So the Washington Wizards present the type of athletic challenge that could make it a little uncomfortable for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Let's not forget about the Toronto Raptors. Now, watching this series last year, I think we all thought after the first couple games, listen, this is going to be a complete steamrolling. Toronto is just not ready. But something happened when they took that series back to Toronto. Something happened. Kyle Lowry stepped up his production. DeMar DeRozan, who I didn't think had that type of big-time talent to carry a team in a playoff setting, he stepped up. Bismack Biyombo, who's no longer with the team, he stepped in and infused some toughness and some energy for that Toronto Raptors squad. So this year, I thought they made a great deal of bringing in Serge Ibaka, somebody that has playoff experience. He's battle tested with the OKC Thunder, and they still have Kyle Lowry and DeRozan. So I think these guys are going to have something to say before it's all said and done. And then we have the number 1 seed, the Boston Celtics. If you could wrestle away that number 1 seed from Cleveland, and you have an MVP caliber player in Isaiah Thomas, let's say that one more time, an MVP caliber player in Isaiah Thomas, a guy that the Sacramento Kings felt wasn't a cog for their future, an important cog for their future, so they let him go. Shows you the state of that franchise. So if you have an MVP caliber player, you have a big guy who was a free agent acquisition in Al Horford. You've got some young pieces, Jaylen Brown. Okay, you've got a Marcus Smart. You have one of the best perimeter defenders in the world, and Avery Bradley. So you've got some pieces that could create some problems for Cleveland. So again, just to kind of summarize, it's not a foregone conclusion that Cleveland Cavaliers will get back there. I think ultimately because of their championship pedigree, because of their pieces in LeBron James, Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving. Okay, Kyrie and LeBron are two of the top 10 best players in the world. That means something, particularly when it comes to playoff experience, and particularly when it's winning time. We've seen them make the big plays against better teams, or against a better team in the Golden State Warriors. So ultimately, yes, these two teams will still clash, but I think the East, it's a little bit more up for grabs. I could see some scenarios where, Cleveland gets pushed to the brink. And we know all it takes is a shot here, a missed shot by Cleveland, an injury, and now all of a sudden the Cleveland Cavaliers may not get there. And I'll just, quick commentary on the Western Conference. I think the Golden State Warriors will not be tested. I think there may be some good games, but series wise, they will not be tested. Once they got their act together, after they stopped complaining about the NBA scheduling them for back-to-backs, which is the same thing that other teams had to do. That's one thing that really irritated the hell out of me, is you have champions that are complaining about the schedule, somehow making it seem like they had an unfair advantage. Well, when you're number 1 in jersey sales, okay, when you have the most bandwagon fans in the world, people are going to want to see the great Golden State Warriors. So, blame it on the schedule.
Okay.
Blame it on your team in a bad spell. Now, they had lost Kevin Durant at that time, so they were learning how to adapt. I get that. But that's a thing of the past. Again, they won 9 out of their last 10 games. They're looking great. They're back to playing good defense. Steph Curry has stepped up, gone back to his MVP form. And now they're working Kevin Durant back into the lineup. So I think, their path will be a little bit easier. I think San Antonio, once again, they've got 60 wins. The machine that is the San Antonio Spurs and Greg Popovich is absolutely amazing. I think it's something like 20 straight years of at least having 50 wins.
Oh,
and
man.
Once again, they're back with another 60-win season. But with that said, I've seen all I need to see with the matchup with them and Golden State. I believe LaMarcus Aldridge, terrific big man. I think Kawhi Leonard is an MVP contender. He plays both sides of the floor, but their backcourt is just not good enough to beat Golden State. It's just not good enough. Tony Parker, God bless him. God bless the Frenchman. He just does not have the legs to be able to compete.
It's about time.
Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Danny Green, hey, he's a guy that could get hot and knock down some three-point shots.
Carolina.
Decent defender, but there's no way that they have the backcourt to compete. Houston, hey, they have a bunch of shooters. They have James Harden, a guy that is an MVP candidate, but eventually it will be the Golden State Warriors. Kevin Durant is on a mission. Stephen Curry is on a mission. Draymond Green is always on a mission. So these guys are going to get back, and I don't think it's that close in the West.
Sean, tell me that we're going to get round 3, please. I don't want any upsets.
Here's my thing, Kevin. I agree with a lot of things that Javon had to say. I'll go start off with the West since he left off with the West. I don't see a lot of teams posing a major threat to the Golden State Warriors. It's been an odd season. I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, once Kevin Durant got signed, it seemed like a foregone conclusion that not only were they going to position themselves for this year, but subsequent years to compete for a championship year in, year out. One thing that we were really able to see, I think it's odd, Durant team of stars, and it's going to somewhat diminish his light, but I think it just made his light more exuberant. I think it became clear once he came to that team that he was the alpha male, that he was clearly the best player on the court with a 2-time MVP, with another star in Klay Thompson, the best two-guard in the league, and with a multi-dimensional player and possible defensive player of the year, Draymond Green. He really showed how good he was defensively, as well as being able to maintain his standard of excellence offensively. When he went out, it was very clear that their identity changed significantly, and they really had to scramble around and put the pieces together, which I think ultimately made them better. I think they were able to shore up some of their bench rotations, get some other guys some playing time and some confidence going into the playoffs, which is really going to help them and help bolster their confidence for this playoff run. Of the teams that I think could even possibly give them any trouble, maybe win a game or two, San Antonio. I agree with the real disparity in the backcourt. Between really Golden State and anybody. There's only a couple of backcourts that even are comparable. I mean, maybe Lillard and McCollum, maybe Beal and Wall. But there's not a lot of backcourts as formidable. None as formidable, in my opinion. And so I think Houston, they played well. I think they played above their level. I think Harden has done a great job of taking on a new role as a point guard. I don't think that can be overstated. How difficult it is to move from shooting guard off the ball, even though he's been a facilitator and a playmaker his whole career, really playing the point guard position full time. I give him a lot of credit. But OKC can't do it. The Clippers have been fool's gold for the last couple of years. They missed their window once they blew it against Houston. a couple years back. They really that closed their window. They need to blow that team up and start over. So I think Golden State is a clear favorite in the West. When it comes to the Eastern Conference, you know, what some of the things Javon said about the Cavaliers are true, but I don't think LeBron James has seen a year that's been adversity free, maybe in his last 4 or 5 years. You know, from when they started with when he went to the Heat and they lost initially and they looked disjointed to when he came back to Cleveland, had some issues. To this year, you know, battling adversity through injuries. They really haven't had their starting five together a lot of the year. And I think their main goal really was to get into the playoffs healthy. I don't think seeding was as important. LeBron James has went to the finals 5 as a two seed on his ring. So I don't think the seeding was as important as much as it was their health. The ability to be able to now again practice and game plan for one team and have days off and only be playing every other day. I think that's huge for their team. In terms of you know, LeBron James being amongst the league leaders in minutes and having logged a whole lot of minutes at his advanced age, having played in 7 straight finals and the amount of minutes at the level of minutes played, going deep into the postseason
Intense
for
minutes.
7 straight years. I do believe that Washington has taken a step forward. They're athletic, they're explosive, and they're very competitive. They have athleticism at a lot of positions. John Wall, I think, is the most underrated point guard in the NBA. I think he has had an outstanding year, and had there not been such great point guard play from a historic season by both Russell Westbrook and James Harden, we would be talking about players like Isaiah Thomas and John Wall in the light that they really deserve to be spoken on. So out of the East as well, Toronto, you know, I think it's important that Kyle Lowry's healthy now. DeRozan's a star. I do believe that Serge Ibaka, with his wealth of playoff experience, his toughness, his ability to even stretch it out, shooting to the perimeter, rebounding and block shots, he really was able to replace Bismack, and he has a better name. I prefer Serge over Bismack, hands down. So I don't think Boston really has the depth to play sustained great ball, 48 minutes in a 7-game series to really challenge Cleveland as a number 1 seed. I agree wholeheartedly that they are one of the worst number 1 seeds that the league has seen in a long time. I mean, really, seriously, I mean, you look at number 1 seeds generally and you say, hey, these people have over a sustained period been the best team. I think anybody who knows basketball this year and understands the year that Cleveland's had in terms of sustaining injuries, J.R. Smith, trying to assimilate new players. Kevin Love was injured for a stretch. They made some trades, one of which the guy was on the court for like a minute and broke his leg. So I think you know, those of us that obviously understand the game, that's not to marginalize the great coaching job that Brad Stevens has done. He's one of the great young minds in the game. You know, even maybe a coach of the year candidate, in my opinion. And they have some very competitive, hard-nosed, gritty, tough players. But I think when you get to the playoffs, you have to have talent, and you have to have star players, and a lot of times more than one star player. Isaiah Thomas does not have enough help at this juncture. That's not to say that they won't make some moves in the upcoming years or upcoming team, but I don't think they have enough talent top to bottom to challenge the depth, the playoff experience, and ultimately the best player in the game until proven otherwise in LeBron James. So I do think, to answer your question, Kevin, I do think we're on a collision course. I do think they will be tested, but I think Cleveland needs to be tested. I think that's what really makes them step and raise up their game as they did last year when their backs are against the wall, when there's adversity. You know, the cream rises to the top. And I think They need that kind of adversity, especially if they're going to challenge and possibly beat the Golden State Warriors.
I'm going to tell you, we're headed for round 3. But there's 2 teams that are going to test Cleveland and Golden State. I'm going to be quick. In the West, the Los Angeles Clippers will test Golden State this year. And I'm almost willing to say that that is going to go 7 games.
Wow.
For some reason, I have a feeling that Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan are going to show up big time. I think there's a lot of pride on the line. I mean, the Warriors have whipped them 4-0, I think 2 years in a row. I think they've won 8, 9, 10 straight against this team. And at some point, your pride has to kick in. And you're a professional basketball player. You're very good at what you do. You're an all-star. I don't think Blake made the team this year, but he's a perennial all-star. They'll show up for that series. That's going to go 6 or 7 games. That's going to go deep into the playoffs, deep into the series.
So you're projecting that they're going to get past an upstart Utah Jazz team in the first round.
I think so. I think they were 3-1 against Utah this year. I think that they're just a better basketball team. They have more playoff experience.
Absolutely.
Doc Rivers at the helm. He's been doing this, for a long time. So I do think they'll get past Utah, and that's 5 or 6 games for me. It won't go longer than 6 games. And that's just the playoff experience. In the East, the team that's going to test Cleveland, if they get to that point, is going to be the Washington Wizards. What seed are the Wizards? Are they the 4 seed?
They are the 4th seed.
They're the 4. Okay, so if
they
are
the number 4 seed.
Okay. They got a tough matchup with Atlanta, right?
Yes.
So
they do.
That'll go.
Yes, they do. That's the 4-5 in the East.
Right. That's going to go 7. If they can get past that matchup there, and if they can get to Cleveland, they're going to give Cleveland all they can handle because of that backcourt. That backcourt is terrific, and John Wall is finally playing as if he feels like he's one of the best point guards in the league. Ultimately, we're going to have Cavs Warriors round 3. It's going to go 7 games, and Cleveland's going to run out of gas. I think that Kevin Durant is the one player that Golden State needed last year in the last 4.5 minutes of Game 7 when they couldn't get a bucket. Because as you go deeper into a playoff series, your legs go. And it's no more about X's and O's. It's all about heart and how much gas do you have in the tank to be able to win that Game 7. And as we saw last year, Steph had no legs. Clay had no legs. Draymond ran out of legs. And when they needed a bucket in the last 4 minutes, they didn't have anybody they can throw the ball to in the post and get an easy bucket. And Cleveland had 2 of those guys. LeBron in the post to get a bucket or draw the double team. And then obviously Kyrie still had legs. He still had spring in his step.
And not to mention, he's one of the toughest shot makers in the NBA.
Absolutely. He's one of the best bad shot makers in the league is Kyrie. But I think we're headed to Cavs Warriors round 3. That's going to go 7. That's going to be a classic. And I think Kevin Durant's going to win his first championship. One of the things I don't like about Cleveland, I don't like how they're defending right now. And I think they might have added too many players. What do you guys think about that? They added 4 or 5 guys in season to their mix.
Isn't that what LeBron wanted?
Come on now.
He was begging the front office to add pieces that he thought would be able to set them up nicely for their matchup against the Golden State Warriors. So this is what LeBron wanted, as obviously he felt the players that he had wouldn't be good enough to counteract what Golden State had done. So
Well, I believe
this is what LeBron wanted.
I believe all he wanted was a backup point guard, right? Did he want all that? A backup point guard and another shooter, right?
He wanted a backup point guard. He wanted another shooter. I think, I think LeBron James. I think there's a survey that goes out each year, kind of like an exit survey, or right at the beginning of the year, and they ask, what player would you most like to play with? I think LeBron James has ranked highest in this honor, maybe 3 years running. I don't think there's any other player that superstar that players would like to play with, and I think if anybody's capable of galvanizing a number of different personalities of players in this generation, it's LeBron James. I do think that's a tough task, especially during happening mid-season where you don't get a lot of practice time. You don't get a lot of opportunities to go over different schemes. Defensive rotations is something that they really struggled in. And I don't think, with the majority of their players back, much attributable to forgetting their defensive principles as much as it is kind of coasting. As much as I hate to admit it for any team, I don't like seeing teams kind of coast through the regular season and expect to just be able to turn on a switch. And the Cavaliers, I think, have been guilty of this. I think it was really underscored and highlighted when J.R. Smith was over there trying to chum it up with somebody on the bench during a game during the season, and he got backdoored for the easy bucket, and then he was real dismissive of it after the game. And I think that really was a major theme this year, was just the inconsistency. They'd get some really great wins, and then they'd have some horrible losses. And I agree with you that they're sputtering, obviously losing their last 4 games going into the playoffs. But I think, those of us that really know basketball understand when you have veteran teams that have been battle tested, playoff tested, and now have the opportunity to practice and work in some guys that they're going to be okay. And I think really a player that hasn't really been mentioned, because as soon as they signed him, they sent him to the D-League and kind of went under the radar after the Bogut loss, was Larry Sanders.
Yeah.
This is a guy who was one of the most athletic players in the league, averaged over 2 blocks a game with the Milwaukee Bucks a couple years back.
Larry Sanders.
Yeah, he was obviously derailed by some off-the-court issues, some substance abuse issues, battling with anxiety and depression. And I think
because Larry Sanders is the championship piece that every team is looking for in the NBA. Larry Sanders is the missing link for every contending team in the NBA.
I think, you know what, Javon? I understand your condescending tone, but I also understand that playoffs are about players, maybe players that hadn't even traditionally made their mark, shining when the light is on. I think anybody would battle with anxiety and depression playing with Milwaukee a couple years ago. I think it's fair.
That's a low blow.
Whole thing.
Y'all didn't leave Milwaukee alone.
Larry Sanders was an elite defensive player. He's still young. He's now in a culture that, just like J.R. Smith, who had been an underwhelming, underperforming player that had been plagued with off the court and other emotional volatility issues. Guess what? Comes to Cleveland and he shoots them into games. In the finals, when they're down in Game 7, going into the third quarter, he knocks down back-to-back threes. They're in the game. So guess what? You may have said the same thing. You may have said the same thing about J.R. Smith before too.
But I think with J.R. Smith, no one ever questioned his talent, and certainly no one ever questioned his ability to shoot the basketball. With J.R. Smith, it was more about being in the right place, right? And what better place to be than with LeBron James, a guy that's unselfish, that's going to be able to bring the best out of you. So I think, J.R. Smith was more of a slam dunk than a Larry Sanders. You can never have too much shooting in a playoff series.
Right.
You can never have too much shooting. So I think, the J.R. Smith move was a lot better.
Can you have too much defense?
Now listen, J.R. Smith is not as bad a defender as people think. Now, he was exposed a little bit in that Toronto series last year. But I think LeBron, to his credit and to your point earlier, LeBron holds his team, he holds them responsible and he holds them accountable when it comes to those defensive rotations and those defensive principles when it matters in the playoffs. So again,
I think J.R. Smith had to assume a greater responsibility on that team, being a starting point guard, taking starting point guard minutes than Larry Sanders. All they need Larry Sanders to do is give Tristan Thompson some respite, come in, rebound the basketball, block some shots, and maybe play 15, 17 minutes a game. All I'm saying is that what they were needing, one of the things that they lost when they lost Mozgov is they lost shot blocking at the rim, and they lost some rebounding.
You lost that presence.
And Tristan Thompson having to play extended minutes, he struggles against some of the bigger, stronger, centers and power forwards in the league. And I think Larry Sanders is more athletic than Tristan Thompson. He's a better shot blocker than Tristan Thompson. He's not as good of an offensive rebounder, but I think going against a backup like a JaVale McGee or, some of these other players, maybe a undersized Draymond Green when he moves to the 5 in the finals, I think he can have some successes in matchups such as that.
Javon, let me ask you this real quickly. Let me segue. We're talking about NBA playoffs and resting and things of that nature. What's your take on this resting during the regular season? Brooklyn sat 6 guys in the last game of the season for rest. Give me something on that.
Listen, my take on resting and tanking, and there's in some instances you can tie the two together. If you have a player that is injured and they need to rest because of an injury, then I'm all for it. If you have a player that is resting for the sake of resting because they're trying to preserve themselves for, games that may occur later in the playoffs, that's where I have a problem, because the assumption is that you're going to make a deep run in the playoffs. If you're LeBron James, it can be justified, getting certain minutes to rest, certain games to rest throughout the course of the season, because guess what? He's been to 6 straight finals. Right. So it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that LeBron James is going to make it to the finals.
Let me ask you this.
If you're on the Washington Wizards or if you're on the Toronto Raptors, okay, this is new territory for you. Okay? You can't be afforded the ability to rest because you haven't gone deep into the playoffs. What are you resting for?
Let me ask you this. With the rest, do you think that these teams, these players are throwing a middle finger up at the league for these nationally televised games, sitting your star players for those Saturday night games, for those TNT games?
Can I touch on this?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I see it from both the product that they're trying to put out from the league standpoint and the coaches, wanting to keep minutes down on certain players. I don't know if it's a middle finger as much as it is bad scheduling. I think the league, when they want to showcase their talent, when they're asking them to do it on the second night of a back-to-back, third game and 4 nights, I think it really speaks to the fact that I don't think the league takes into account the grind that, these teams are flying in 1 a.m., maybe get up, do shoot around 8, 9 a.m. They may have gotten dinged up. They may not be incapacitated. They may have a rolled ankle, jam finger, sore back, whatever, but little, nicks that you get throughout the season. But, you need not to be scheduling games, 3 games in 4 nights, and that be the televised game.
Okay.
Second night from back to back. And Adam Silver understands it. It's something that's a paramount issue for them, and it's something that they're looking at extending the season by a week to decrease the amount of back-to-backs and 3 games in 4 nights. But, you know, when I hear some of these older players criticize these younger players, I think they also aren't really speaking to the fact that the game is played harder, faster, and stronger. These players are using more advanced machinery, equipment, things to push their body to the absolute limit.
You shaking your head. Why are you shaking your head, Javon?
If I may interject, when I hear they're playing the game harder because the guys are faster and stronger, I may concede to faster. I may concede in some respect to stronger, but harder I cannot. The game was brutal back in the 80s, and you can talk to players of the Celtics dynasty, players of the Lakers dynasty, the Bad Boy Pistons, the Sixers, the Bulls. It was a brutal game back then. It was way more physical. So, you know, when you say harder, I mean, listen.
I didn't say they were tougher. I didn't say these players were tougher.
No, but it was a more physical game back then.
I agree with that too.
You know,
I agree with that.
You could literally, you know, maybe punch a guy or give a guy a hard elbow up top and not get thrown out of the game. Whereas now, you know, if a guy gives a good hard foul on a break, there's a chance that he may not be there for the rest of the game. So, you know, I would agree with you that, yes, you do have players that are more athletic. I don't think the league has seen the likes of point guards that are as athletic as Russell Westbrook.
That's really what I'm saying. Like these players, the demand on these players at even certain positions now to be scorers and facilitators and the skill set that you have to have in today's game. You know, after the advent of European players and, you know, multifaceted players, you're looking at, I need my 4 to be able to cover pick and roll and go back and cover out at the 3-point line. I need him to be able to shoot threes and set screens.
But that 4 is not guarding the best player that plays the same position on the other end.
Draymond Green's not guarding the best player?
That's an aberration. The guards.
Draymond Green's not guarding the best player.
The guards are not consistently guarding their counterparts on the other end. It's not happening.
Cross matches.
Steph Curry is not guarding Russell Westbrook.
Steph Curry isn't guarding anybody
on a regular basis.
Hey.
Klay Thompson is doing that. LeBron James is not guarding Kevin Durant consistently throughout the game.
Oh.
It's Draymond Green. So what I'm saying is, back when Jordan was playing it, and then I might catch some flack about this, I'm just thinking about the golden era of basketball. But back when I was watching that era of basketball, Joe Dumars defended Michael Jordan.
You was checking
Michael Jordan defended.
I don't know if you called what he was doing defending him, but yeah, he guarded him.
Michael Jordan defended Clyde Drexler. So what I'm saying is, and I know we need to move on, Kev, but just to get this last piece in.
Yeah.
We talk about these guys needing to rest, these guys needing to sit. They're only playing one end of the floor for a lot of the games that they're playing, okay? You're not having to go, if you're Kevin Durant, you're not having to go against LeBron James for a full 48 minutes, okay? It may happen in the last 5-6 minutes of the fourth quarter. These guys are getting paid too much damn money to be trying to rest. Matthew Dellavedova received a $40 million contract from the Milwaukee Bucks. Tristan Thompson, Sean, you admitted that Tristan Thompson basically doesn't do anything other than hustle and offensive rebound. He's got an $80 million contract.
I need you to not marginalize that. I think the Warriors thought it was a big deal.
Hey, we got about 2 minutes left. Hey, quickly, I need your MVP and why. Quickly, MVP, NBA.
Listen, you know, as tough as it is, I'm gonna go with Russell Westbrook. I think it's been a neck and neck. I think you could make outside arguments for Kawhi Leonard or LeBron James, but I think it really comes down to a two-man race. At the end of the day, what he lost in Kevin Durant, one of the top 3 players in the league, being able to still almost win 50 games, hitting game-winning shots, doing it down the stretch, albeit not with a high shooting percentage all the time, and some of it being suspect shot selection, but to rebound at that clip at a point guard, to play that explosive and with that type of intensity for 81 games, I think he sat out 1 game, is nothing short of amazing. He became a much better passer, facilitator, utilizing his teammates, and he was clutch in doing it. I'm going with Russell Westbrook.
Javon.
I think Sean eloquently articulated exactly what I was thinking. Russell Westbrook. Bottom line is this: he doesn't shoot the highest percentage. Sometimes his decision making isn't the best decision making. He's must-see TV. He's one of the most electrifying athletes that the NBA has ever seen. He plays hard. He plays almost like his hair is on fire. Literally every minute, every second of the game. And the guy averaged a triple-double. 31 points, 10.7 rebounds, which is phenomenal, from the guard position. And he still was in the top 4 in assists, 10.4 assists. So I think Russell Westbrook, no question. I think his heroics down the stretch with the game-winning shot that he had against Orlando, or actually that was a game-tying shot to get into overtime.
In Denver.
And that was a 50-point triple-double, by the way. And then what he did in Denver as well, I think that solidified it. But James Harden had a great season. I think he was able to be a facilitator. He thrived in Mike D'Antoni's offense. And I think before it's all said and done, these two are going to have an opportunity to really prove their case on the court. But for the regular season, I'm going with Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double. He's your MVP. That's all we have for you today. Listen, what you saw today was a tremendous first show. This was the first show. Very first show. You folks are in for a treat. Off the bench, we're going to come to you each and every week. Again, we're going to record Saturday, and we're going to throw this out there Monday or Tuesday. But off the bench, first show. Fellas, thank you very, very much. We didn't even get to LeVar Ball and Marshawn Lynch, which is look, we didn't get to LeVar Ball's silly self. Hey, but before we end this podcast, I want to shout out my North Carolina Tar Heels for winning the national championship this year without a single one-and-done player. Without a single one-and-done player. That's all I have for you today. Fellas, thank you very much, man. We'll do it again next week.
Catch you next week.
All right.
All right, Aaron.
All right.